prolific and ruthless conspiracy that relies primarily on covert means for expanding its sphere of influence. It is a system which has conscripted vast human and material resources into the building of a tightly knit, highly efficient machine that combines military, diplomatic, intelligence, economic, scientific, and political operations. Its preparations are concealed, not published. Its mistakes are buried, not headlined. Its dissenters are silenced, not praised.
Billions of people just living out their lives, oblivious. Choice is an illusion created between those with power and those without.
I drink your milkshake. I drink it up.
Thank you, John Larson. I receive your kind words on behalf of all of our courageous members of the House of Representatives who want the best for the American people. And what we can do that is best for them in the next 24 hours is to pass affordable, accessible health care for all Americans. The best for all Americans is to have 32 million more people to have health insurance in our country. The best for...
Piece of stinking filth.
Shh, you're saying a shop. This is AJ of the InfoWars. Listen to the Shaliak. This is Alex Jones of InfoWars. Listen to Shaliak on the Cold Reality News and Report.
This is the coolest thing I have ever seen.
Well, hello there!
The war in Yemen is over 1,000 days old, and the humanitarian crisis in the country is only getting worse. According to the UN, almost 47,000 Yemenis have been displaced since December, while reports of children being killed or injured in Saudi-led airstrikes keep coming in. We spoke to some of those affected. I should warn you, you may find some of the following images disturbing.
لأبنائنا وبي والده نمشي نعزي الرويان ففجأة حوالي قعدنا 5 دقائق هكذا من جابرين وجاء طيران السعودي الأمريكي فضرب الصاروخ الأول فقدت قدمي اليمنى فالصاروخ الأول وكان بين أقوم وأسقط لكن ما كان قد شفته.
The U.S. continually assisting Saudi Arabia in the murder of the Yemeni people.
زي ما الحجر او مسمار شلفنا شلف بعدين شفنا المسمار رحنا ندعي للشباب يا اسعفوا وانا جينا لهنا طوالي بعدين.
Just to remind you, the Saudi-led coalition started its incursion in Yemen back in 2015 against the Houthi opposition fighters that seized power in the country. Since then, Saudi Arabia has been under pressure from the international community and finally started sending aid to civilians. The logo painted on their tents saying Saudi Arabia, Kingdom of Humanity. Author Abdel Bariatwan says it's hardly humane to wait 3 years into a bombing campaign to suddenly then send aid.
The Saudi actually, after 3 years of bombardment by all means, from air, from sea, from grounds, they did not actually put an end to this war and declare victory. Now more than 10,000 people were killed, most of them civilian, and also the famine is imposed in Yemen. It is a very drastic situation. And in the top of that, they are saying that we are caring about the humanitarian side of this war. We are helping the Yemeni people. I believe the Saudi is hugely embarrassed. They started this war 3 years ago, and now the international community can see the drastic effect on the people and saying to the Saudi, enough is enough.
A Turkish military helicopter has crashed near Syria's northern border, where Turkey is carrying out an operation against Kurdish militias considered terrorists by Ankara. At least 2 people were killed in the incident. The Turkish president vowed the perpetrators will pay the consequences.
Our helicopter has just been downed. Of course, all this will happen. We are at war. There'll be casualties on both sides. Yesterday, we destroyed their missile depots. Surely we'll make them pay a heavy price.
Do we mark time by what comes before and after?
Syrian air defense has responded to new Israeli raids near the capital Damascus. The Israeli military confirms it's attacked 12 targets in Syria, including both Syrian and Iranian facilities.
The IDF is striking numerous Syrian and Iranian military targets in Syria in response to Iranian aggression. More to follow.
Israel says the raid was in retaliation for its fighter jet being downed by the Syrian military. The jet crashed in northern Israel, with the pilots managing to eject. However, Damascus says that its air defences hit the plane in response to a previous attack by Israeli forces. The perspectives of Syria and Israel on the situation differ in certain respects.
This morning, the Syrian Army Command issued a statement confirming that Syrian aerial defenses intercepted Israeli fighter jets that were carrying out an airstrike on a location in central parts of the country. And then later on, Sana news agency, the state news agency, said that Israel carried out subsequent airstrikes on locations west and south of the Syrian capital, Damascus, and also said that aerial defenses from the Syrian army have been intercepting these attacks. According to my sources, by 9:30 local timing, all airstrikes stopped. We can also confirm that the sites that were targeted in the earlier attack that took place on dawn today is the T4 air base in central Syria, in the deserts of central Syria near Palmyra. My military sources are saying that there has been no casualties, only 3 wounded soldiers in this dawn's attack, but there is no official confirmation so far. And the positions that were hit today in the subsequent attacks are in the Mas area west of Damascus and in Kisweh area south of Damascus. Kisweh has been hit before by Israeli airstrikes earlier this year, and back then Israel said that it hit what it believed to be a gathering of Iranian advisors in the command building of the Syrian Army's 1st Armored Division.
Well, it's a play in 3 acts. It all started with an Iranian drone, a remotely piloted vehicle, which entered Israel proper. We don't know yet whether for surveillance or attack, and it was shot down by an Israeli armed Apache helicopter. Now, following that particular incident, the Israeli Air Force has retaliated against the launcher of this particular drone, hitting the command and control vehicle and perhaps the launcher itself. And during this attack, one of the Israeli F-16s was either hit by Syrian ground defenses, or the pilots got the impression that they are about to be hit and bailed out. So Israel has lost one F-16, and following that, Israel has again retaliated, hitting the 12 targets, several of them being Iranian and several Syrian. This is the most serious incident between Israel and Syria, and definitely between Israel and Iran in many years. Perhaps in 10 or 15 years, we have not seen the like of it.
Let's cross live to Jerusalem now to discuss this with Max Blumenthal, author and senior editor at TheRealNews.com. Mr. Blumenthal, welcome to the programme. It's good to see you. You're in Jerusalem right now. Can you tell us what the situation is like there, what the feeling is in the city, and have you heard anything? Have you felt anything?
Yeah, right now in Tel Aviv, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and Defense Minister Avigdor Lieberman are meeting with Army Chief of Staff Gadi Eisenkot and the entire Army Command at the Defense Ministry. This meeting has been going on since the morning. No one has come out. Netanyahu has muzzled his cabinet ministers, and at the same time, it's been reported that Netanyahu has gotten on the phone with his American and Russian counterparts in an attempt to de-escalate the situation. Netanyahu seems to have every intention of not escalating, which is very significant for a number of reasons. And when he muzzles his cabinet ministers, that usually means that he doesn't want anything to come out in the Israeli press, which could trigger further escalation. This is being covered constantly by the Israeli news, and it's all the country is talking about right now.
How serious is this incident, in your opinion?
It's a dramatic incident for a number of reasons. First of all, this is the first Israeli plane that Syria has downed since 1982. Second of all, Israel is unable to escalate for a number of reasons. Benjamin Netanyahu was in the opposition when the Israeli government attacked southern Lebanon and lost to Hezbollah in 2006, and he fears another escalation in which Hezbollah is substantially stronger after the experience it's gained on the Syrian battlefield, and the Syrian army has gained advanced Russian air defenses, the S-200, for example, which appears to have downed this F-16. So Israel is in a tight bind here, and they have blamed this entire incident on Iran and consider it an attack on Israeli sovereignty, which is actually, frankly, bizarre, because the Israeli military struck 12 targets inside Syria, not Israel, and the Golan Heights is considered under international law Syrian territory.
Iranian targets were also hit in this incident. What kind of response, if any, do you expect from Tehran?
It's unclear to me if Iran is really calling the shots here. I mean, this appears to be the Syrian government, after losing something like 100 soldiers, either from its own regulars or a allied militia, to American airstrikes, has decided that it's had enough with these infringements on its sovereignty and that it will strike back. It appears to be striking back with advanced Russian anti-aircraft missiles. And another significant instance here, or angle here, is that Israel has had to be very precise in responding to what it calls an Iranian drone, because Russian military assets are honeycombed across Syrian air bases, the very air bases Israel attacks, and Israel's afraid to strike any Russian targets. So again, this is a difficult moment for Benjamin Netanyahu, and we also have to keep in mind the domestic circumstances. Netanyahu is facing police recommendations for his own indictment for corruption charges. There are going to be massive protests against Netanyahu tonight in Tel Aviv, and many of those protesters are insisting, somewhat conspiratorially, that Netanyahu is seeking an escalation to distract from his own corruption problems and domestic plight.
We're already seeing an escalating situation in the north of Syria. How high do you think is the risk of further escalation in southern Syria? I mean, do you expect further attacks to happen?
I mean, we saw last year a lot of action in southern Syria around Kalamun. There was pretty strong evidence that Syrian rebel insurgents connected to al-Qaeda were actually coordinating attacks with Israel, where they would fire a mortar into the Golan Heights or into Israeli territory to give Israel the pretext to attack the Syrian army. But I think we're going to have to reevaluate our entire analysis of what happens along the Syrian and Israeli border, because the fact that Syria has demonstrated deterrent capacity against Israeli jets today and its willingness to take them down, and because of the fact that Netanyahu is demonstrating his lack of interest in escalating.
Few technical difficulties here, folks. Cold Reality Radio here on the UCY.TV Broadcasting Network. Let's see. War escalating in the Middle East. Of course, Iran being blamed, pulling the whole preconditioned mindset into play. "71 killed after Russian passenger plane crashes near Moscow." Opening ceremony ratings plunge for the Olympics. Organizers hit by cyber attack. NBC sorry for ignorant, insensitive comment. Russian figure skaters dominate despite the ban. Of course, Israel confirms down jet hit by Syrian fire. Tamiflu shortages from coast to coast. Experimental drug promises to kill virus in a day. Yeah, right. Judge Judy says, "I think women who watch me like to see women in control." Pentagon's nuclear doctrine, retrograde and reckless. Meet the U.S. Army's latest killer robotic Humvee. While people are starving and dying, veterans are dying, let's just keep on feeding the war machine. Nothing wrong with that, right? Nothing wrong with that. Welcome to Cold Reality Radio here on the UCY.TV Broadcasting Network. Sunday, February 11th. It's 10:18 on the East Coast of the fictional Nightmerica, the fictional United States Corporation, where everybody plays their roles. Everybody, like it was said, all the world's a stage and we are all actors on it. You can choose to act in it, in the fiction. You can become wise to the fiction and then tell others about it. But they just love the fiction. It's like a good movie. Always entertaining. And unfortunately, gotten so used to death and destruction and malfeasance and corruption that it's fun. It's fun for everyone. It's fun for everyone. But hopefully you can get to the point where you can see how destructive and criminal and full of shit that the United States system is. And not only that, it's, again, part of the Crown Corporation, which is nothing but a death machine. Wars, 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 and not because there's bad guys all over the place. It's because people believe and think that the good guys are the good guys when the good guys are actually the bad guys. And in most cases, the bad guy or guys are actually the good guys, fighting for what's right, fighting for whatever this is supposed to be. But of course, it's been co-opted and raped and pillaged into this fiction where we believe we're part of countries. We believe we are part of the greater good, that America is fighting to spread democracy, that Donald Trump got elected because he's actually going to try to save America, and that the Democrats are destroying America, which can be true to a certain extent. But when Donald Trump goes over and funds Saudi Arabia, gives them incredible sums of money and incredible technology and war machine type manufacturing, so that they can go and bomb the legs off of children, like that boy was saying. Usually they have like a translator, but the little boy said, I lost my leg. So you used to look down and his leg at the knee is gone. Houthis, whatever the case might be, these Saudi Arabian mongrels, and that doesn't encompass anyone who's Saudi Arabian, obviously, but these people are degenerates, and they are dictators, the acceptable dictatorship in America. Okay, but there's always bullshit and words that are used to make people actually think that Saudi Arabia is good or that they're being attacked or something. They are a dictatorship, and they should, just like so-called Libya and so-called Iraq and some of these other leaders and regimes that have been taken down. Saudi Arabia, you would think, would be taken down by the moral compass of the world, America. And it's amazing, the brainwashing. Amazing. Like, I got into a number of years ago with a friend of mine, and we didn't speak for the longest time because I actually have different views and I question everything. He says he questions everything too, but every time the answer after he questions it is America is a force for good. We aren't doing we're not, if we're doing something wrong, then it's necessary. It's necessary because there's so many bad guys all over the place. There's so many bad guys. Even though we created them, even though the West installed them, it's all for the greater good. It's all so that we can be the greatest thing. We can be number one. We can be all these things, which this is all a mirage. It's all a fiction. Because when these forces for evil are done over there, they're going to destroy. They've already attacked us militarily. Biologically, chemically, we've already been attacked, dumbed down. To the point where people believe. We have veterans, we have events, the Super Bowl, where they'll show these 80, 90-year-old veterans who still totally believe that all these things happened organically that got them into the war, fighting for America, fighting for democracy, fighting for all these things, which is not even the case. But you can't, there's no turning things around, changing things around. It's always this David and Goliath, or David versus Goliath thing that happens, whether it be in sports, whether it be in in all the different aspects of life in the world, financially, militarily, industrially, all these things. It's always David versus Goliath. In sports, it's Tom Brady and the New England Patriots, who fell to the Philadelphia Eagles in Super Bowl 52. And I am in this area, and did I watch? Yes, I did. Did I listen to all the hype and everything, that goes on up until it? I was like, no. I have a sick family member who is that situation is pulling heavily on my heart and on my mind. And throughout the years living in the suburban Philadelphia area, you watch the football team, and you root for a team to win. You root for, it's all the tribal, us against them, that type of stuff that is not an awful thing, but it really does pull people away mentally, spiritually. In certain ways, it pulls people away from the truth, being actually being able to see how detrimental that America is in the grand scheme of things, and not only detrimental to people outside, but also detrimental to the people inside. The divide and conquer, the black versus white, the Me Too now that has gone, that's taken, gone into a gear not even imaginable, but is all part of the grand scheme of let's create so much chaos, let's create so many stories, so many things that people can't actually see, that we're moving into a hot world war. These are just the little battles that are going on right now, especially like Blumenthal said on that RT report, that Syria still has the backing of Russia. And for Syria to be able to have that effect on Israel, and to be able to put one of those jets down, okay, that there's Russian technology and Russian backing there, and that they're just not going to allow, and I don't really believe that there's any good guys or bad guys in this. I sit there and I watch Putin and I watch Russia and all this stuff, and I think everybody's playing their role, everybody's doing the things that they're supposed to do, but the bottom line is that they all know collectively, whether it's China or Russia or Iran or America or the UK or any one of these places around the world, they know that we are moving like a laser directly into a world conflict across the board, because America is bankrupt. It's amazing how people would listen to that and be like, oh, look at all the fluctuations in the stock market this week. When they want to take the stock market down and destroy people financially after they've gotten all these incredible gains over the years, all of these minions of the system and the corporations and When they want to take this thing down, they're going to do it. They're going to do it. The world's going to become an even uglier place. And there's a lot of different compartments to the whole thing. The compartmentalization, everybody in their specific groups, everybody in their so how it's going to play out is unknown at this point, but we can see what they're doing to Russia with the Russian athletes and not letting them be what they are, breaking them up into other categories, but yet still performing and apparently doing quite well in this Hunger Games, if you will, without the death and all that other stuff. But that's probably, we're going to see something like that at some point, not as extreme as the movie, but we are going to see something in that area of the fiction at some point. The Maze Runner, I was talking with somebody about Divergent, those genre of movies, the Maze Runner, the Divergent, and of course Hunger Games. They're kind of all tied together. The futuristic, world. Obviously, Maze Runner was a little bit harder to figure out, but it's always mixed with some kind of cataclysm, war that brings people to that are rebuilding society, and of course, they're rebuilding society in a despotic, we have to control people type of way. The Maze Runner, where they're controlling a lot of the young people. And they're not like, that they were a little hokey. They bring a lot of the Jennifer Lawrence and stuff into it, but some of them are just, there are young actors, and you're going to see a lot of these young actors. But I think that they're very well. They're not just cheesy like a Star Wars with a lot of the things that you've seen in these newer Star Wars movies. It's like so Disneyfied, the Disney effect, the Disney touch, if you will. I think they're much better than that. Not saying that. I guess Star Wars is going to have there's a group of people out there that'll shame you if you say that, anything negative about any of the Star Wars, and they'll love them no matter what, no matter how hokey or no matter how much preconditioned it's really truly amazing how they've gotten people to get into like a minds when it comes to the climate change thing, to get everybody, not everybody, but large amounts of people to become very, very militant when it comes to talking about climate change and things like this. They really don't believe that there could be a system that wants to deceive you so much that this is happening, that eventually, if they fill your head with so much fear that you will accept your own demise at their hands, or if many people start to perish from a flu pandemic of some sort, that people will just accept It's time, it's the earth is, we've done so much damage to the earth that this is the way things have got to be. But they can't accept that these are lies because too many scientists, we've been taught to respect presidents, to feel like, oh my God, look, it's the president. The rock star status of Barack Obama, that fraud. And of course, the rock star status of even Donald Trump, who is quite fraudulent. Bush, Reagan, all of these bloodline family members that tie back to European monarchy. This is a system of family and blood with the right to rule over everyone else. And we know, as a result of Janai.com, that 17th to 18th or 19th cousins, Trump and Hillary. Okay? But you'll hear people think, are we all related? Are we all fucking related? And this is all from the programming and the shit, that people hear on TV. So they will totally squash any kind of relevant facts or irrelevant information that points out that we are being dominated by family members and people that are maybe not so closely related. But of course, Obama having like 36 cousins in the Senate alone, or possibly the House, maybe that makes more sense. I think the Senate, though. You type in Obama, 36 cousins in the Senate, and it'll pull up information in there. He's sitting there holding a baby that was produced by one of his other cousins. So he's holding his cousin in his hands in the article. So it's like people just cannot understand. They cannot fathom that, and they think there's no way, because the whole world has, to a large extent, has been portrayed as these bumbling, just people that cannot get anything right, cannot get anything. How could something like 9/11 happen without somebody saying something? How could all these things happen? And the only thing that people have to say is because they cannot go to that place where they're afraid to go to that place because somebody's going to judge them. Or they can't mentally go there because they're eternal thumbsuckers. Or they just can't because they've been programmed to not go there. They've been programmed to not go. So it's easier to say it's just incompetence that we had no air superiority that day. We had no air, all these drills that were running that took our air defense, 3-4 hours away at the time. All of these fantastical things that just the stars just aligned that day so that everything that happened on that day could happen, and that everything that happened after that day could happen as well. People are just programmable morons. Cookie cutter commoners. That's what is out there. Cookie cutter commoners who just love to agree with one another, especially when it's safe to do so. It's safe. Like one big fucking safe house for the ignorant. A big safe house for the thumbsuckers who cannot accept that we have been lied to on such a scale. And it continues because they know that the truth and the lies, or more so the lies, have a lifespan. The lies have a lifespan. And those who realize that these people are killers, they're murderers. They would bomb a village of babies and not think one fucking thing of it. So, as we move forward, those that realize that this fictional, diseased culture system, the more that become aware of how malicious and draconian, murderous it is, that they will, and this was planned a long time ago, they will take out large portions of populations in whatever way they see fit. Which brings me to the article everybody's heard about, you know, the flu and how devastating it is, and it's as devastating as it was in 2009 with the H1N1, you know, the swine, you know, all these things. Okay, we also had one. We also had the swine flu thing back in '75. But of course, we never hear the stories. We never hear the truth. There is information out there about how toxic and detrimental the vaccine and the inoculations were back in '75. We heard about 2009, the CDC right away, boom, pandemic level 4 or 5. What do you see on Time Magazine? We're not ready for the next pandemic. Just setting things up, preparing the mental playground for their chemical and biological weapons that have been dispersed, and you know the Tuskegee Airmen getting shot up with syphilis. That's horrific, but low end. I surmise that their plan for the future, because again, the lies have a lifespan. And even though people have been brainwashed and people are thumbsuckers and people are void of any ability to think critically about a government or the mind controllers or the thieving tax assessors, because it's always the taxes, the price of living in America. We've been lied to so much about the past that we think that everything is so great, and 100 years ago we wouldn't be able to do this. Of course, times change, things change. The same system that gave us the ability to create highways, and of course they're crumbling. There was only a 50 or 60 year span on how long these structures were going to be solid and without issue. But now we're seeing, I read an article just the other day about Philadelphia and how it's got all of these, as these structures are assessed, they get, different colors of is this from not such a dangerous thing to a dangerous issues with structures. Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, huge with these red flags. These red flags. So John Rappaport broke down the 2009 so-called pandemic marvelously, and he continues to do things with the flu, especially every year when the flu comes out, and how they lie to us and how they tell us that we have to go out and get these flu shots because it's going to protect you from the flu or make the flu less severe, where they even admit that, and I'm going to read some of this here, that it only covers 10%, and because over the last 70 years or so that vaccines have become so ineffective, which I don't want any of them. I don't give a fuck what they're for. Don't want any of them. They are only 10% effective. So massive flu outbreak. Here's the real story that the media will not touch, the lies, the hoax, and the scandal of it all. In case you haven't been following the uproar over the flu outbreak, you've missed the fact that health authorities admit this year's flu vaccine only 10% effective. But of course, they urge you to get that fucker anyway. Get that shot. Why is this year's so ineffective? Because it's made using chicken eggs, which is, again, what Patrick and Clint have spoken out. This is a form of xenotransplantation where vaccines and being made, even if they were legitimate, they should not be used or mixed in with any kind of animal whatsoever. But it helps when you're trying to, or when they are trying to fuck people up massively. And, diseases and things that animals get that we're not supposed to get, and ones that we get that they're not supposed to get. Now there's this mixture of animal DNA. So we've all been tainted in that realm, and it's not good. But people love it because some fucking scientist or some fucking university said, and then this is how we killed polio, and this is how Sabin and Salk. I wish somebody had put bullets through both of their fucking heads, because they were, again, two doctors. Oh, flattering titles. Go fuck yourself, number one. And then when they introduced whatever poison and toxin that they wanted to put in there, which had the SV40 cancer virus that is sexually transmitted. Okay, these bags of shit, whether they knew it or not, are the cause of large portions of disease today, not only cancer as well, with the SV40 cancer virus. And so, because making it with the chicken eggs, researchers discovered that the flu virus, which is placed in the vaccine, mutates in the chicken eggs. Therefore, by the time a person takes the shot, he or she is not protected against this year's seasonal flu. He's being protected against a mutated virus that isn't causing the flu this year or whatever year. This is the conventional explanation. If you think it's the whole story, John's got condos on the moon for you to walk through. You see, vaccines have been made using chicken eggs, not just this year, but for the past 70 years. That would mean that the flu vaccine has been ineffective for decades. Healthline.com, the majority of flu vaccines are grown in chicken eggs, a method of vaccine development that has been used for 70 years. But wait, there's more, much more. And then, of course, there are 3 scandals John covered this week, or actually this was around January 15th. You can go to his blog, No More Fake News, or johnrappaport.wordpress.com, and he'll break down these things pretty awesomely, effectively. He's a guy who you could say predicted that fake news. Well, he didn't predict that fake news, but it ultimately came to fruition that his No More Fake News, now everybody's using fake news, and the people that are saying this is fake news are the real true bullshitter liars, or the people that just have their heads up their ass and they're getting a huge paycheck. And the ones that are being accused of the fake news, you might want to listen to them. But see, that's not the way the slave cookie commoner mindset works. You have to go to the flattering title. That's where the truth is. All right. So this guy, Peter Doshi, writing in the British Medical Journal, reveals a monstrosity. Doshi states every year that respiratory samples are taken from so-called flu patients in the U.S. And tested in labs. And the kicker is only a small percentage of these samples show the presence of a flu virus. This, of course, means that people in America are diagnosed by doctors with the flu, have no flu virus in their bodies. So they don't have the flu. Therefore, if you assume the flu vaccine is useful and safe, it couldn't possibly prevent all those flu cases that aren't flu cases. The vaccine couldn't possibly work. The vaccine isn't designed to prevent fake flu unless, John uses the pigs flying scenario. The exact quote from Peter Doshi: even the ideal influenza vaccine matched perfectly to circulating strains of wild influenza and capable of stopping all influenza viruses can only deal with a small part of the flu problem, because most flu appears to have nothing to do with influenza. Every year, hundreds of thousands of respiratory specimens are tested across the U.S. Of those tested, on an average, 16% are found to be influenza positive. It's no wonder so many people feel that flu shots don't work. For most flus, they can't, because most diagnosed cases of the flu aren't the flu. So even if you're a true believer in mainstream vaccine theory, which most cookie cutter, common, or jackasses are, you're on the short end of the stick here. They're conning your socks off. The basic flu symptoms, cough, fever, chills, sore throat, muscle aches, weakness, can be caused by a variety of factors that have nothing to do with the flu virus. Now, one thing that I found out from listening to Patrick, from understanding enough, and hopefully more in the future, because there's worse things coming down the line. And whatever, if these things aren't the flu, then what the fuck are they? Okay? So when you get these viruses and you have a fever and you are feeling achy and everything, it's because this virus is eating magnesium out of your body. So I'm watching the Super Bowl over at and I was sick from, I want to say, mid-January, and right now here, coming back to mid-February, I did a show where you heard that I was sick. That was like 3 weeks ago, and I'm still fucking coughing. I'm still trying to get something out of my lungs. So didn't have any high fever, didn't have any aches, mild aches, and but just, it didn't take long for a sinus infection or something that felt like a sinus infection to happen. And then, of course, all that filth that gets created up there in the sinuses moves down into into the lungs to a certain extent. But what I do is I do an inhaler of colloidal silver, the nasal spray pump. I do the mist in there too, and I've also got a form of a nebulizer that will take silver and then it will make it even more accessible to the lungs in a smaller 1 to 10 micron type thing. Some people call it the silver lungs thing. You've heard that before, but it's really just a nebulizer that you put silver in. Whatever silver, whether it's that you make or that you buy, and you can put that in there. Now, I did that the other night for the first time, and it feels though it had some effect. I think I might have to do it again. But overall, with the chills and the body aches and just that, you got to start consuming magnesium. The minute that you start to feel like you're running a fever or something, you got to get magnesium in your body. There is this product out there that's a powdered magnesium that you warm some water. Now you don't have to boil the water, but you can just heat it up to a certain temperature. I drank some this morning just because, it helps. Not only does it help with that, but it also helps kind of move things along in your gizzard. But so my brother texted me on Wednesday, and he was just like, "Are you okay?" And I'm like, "All right," but also. Our sister is not doing well at all. Very serious situation there. Parasitic infection, according to what Patrick Jordan has so graciously and so helpfully shed quite a bit of light on for me personally. He said Patrick's just such a great being, one of God's greatest creations, if you will. Along with Clint and our own Jules, doing so much to research and help learn themselves, but also to be able to convey that knowledge like Jules does every day on her program so marvelously, so incredibly. Even after her challenges over the summer and the health issues that she personally and her family dealt with. So, just God bless these people that do this. And so he's like, so I call him up. I'm like, "What's up?" And I knew he was sick, and I obviously had been, low level sick for like 3 or 4 weeks. A lot of people are saying that, like weeks of just coughing. Here and there, not like super cold, but I mean, I've had a little bit here and there, and it's quite concerning because you think like maybe 2 weeks, maybe 2 weeks or something. Anyway, so I come home that night and I grab some of this powdered stuff. I call up my nephew and I say, "Hey, listen, I'm bringing this over. I heat up some water." I gave him some distilled water as well. I said, "Heat this up. And give it to my other nephew and give it to your dad." And so I find out the next day that, and I mean, he was so that just the depletion of whatever these viruses do, one of which is to eat the magnesium out of the body. That's where the aches come from. So try to have some of this powder, this magnesium powder. It's got sometimes calcium. There's different combinations of it. There's a little calcium. There's more calcium, or very little. Anyway, so he said, I drank this, and within like an hour or so, my body relaxed to the point where I was able to get some sleep. Now this was he realized that he was sick on Monday afternoon, and then I think maybe Wednesday night. His fever broke and things like that. So make sure you get magnesium in there, because when your body gets depleted of magnesium so much, it can affect your lungs. And I think largely it seems that depletion of magnesium has a lot to do with people developing pneumonia and things like that. So you have to get the You have to have the vitamin D, but mostly I think magnesium is just key because it eats these things out of your body. And I think they're programmed to do that way. There goes, the conspiracy theory. They're programmed to do these things. And of course, you see all these commercials about these, old people that are doing yoga, and then it's a get your pneumonia, pneumococcal blockle fucking vaccine, which is this is all bad news, people. This is all bad news. I go to a chiropractor, kinesiologist, and he. There was this old couple that was in there. I was like, man, they look pretty old, and they were in the other room, and I could hear him talking with them. And I said, who were those old folks in there? And he said, yeah, they come in here a lot for for chiropractic care. I said, how are they doing? And he's like, they're doing really well. They know to stay away from their doctor. They know to stay away from these fucking people. This medical system is death. This medical system is death. If they're not killing you, they're waiting for you to come into the hospital so that they can kill you. And they don't even know it. They don't even know it. Why? Because they respect the pharmaceuticals and the drug companies and all these flattering title corporations. They respect all these, the Mercs and fuck Merck, fuck all of them. They're not creating anything that's good for you, while at the same time trying to attack anything that is good for you, like CBD oil, marijuana, whatever the case might be. They're there trying to increase their profits, right? And again, people think it's all about money. This is all about money. It's all about money. It's all about no. It's about them obviously living parasitically off of the rest of us, knowing full well, at least some percentage of them, knowing full well that this drug that they're going to put out, like the statins, fucking rob you of your cognitive function. And then if you're on it long enough, you will get some kind of neurological Parkinson's or some kind of Alzheimer's or something and waste away. Okay? This is the truth. If your doctor says you got it, in some cases, and I've heard this any number of times from people, that if you have higher cholesterol or more LDL cholesterol, and Patrick has mentioned certain things about this that correlate with what I'm about to say, I believe that's why they tell you to you get the margarine and you don't do some of these other things, and that people stay away from the saturated fat and they stay away from the salt. They demonize salt. They demonize saturated good fats. There's fats that heal and then there's fats that kill. Margarine fucking kills. And that's why it was put on the market. They demonize everything that's good for you so you stay away from it. That's the type of system that we live in, and these people, with the hope of whatever creator is out there, that these people will suffer the pain that they've inflicted on other people with their fucking lies, with their fucking pseudo fucking science, their pseudo fucking climate. The sun's got nothing to do with the climate, like the fucking UN said. These people should be electrocuted at the dick. Liars, 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 and liars. Levels and layers of liars that work for this criminal fucking system of government and the UN and all these. The UN, we're going to put this United Nations together so that we can eliminate war altogether. And there's been nothing but war and more war and excessive war since their fucking creation. These people are the disease, and they need to be eradicated or just thrown in a cell and shat and pissed and vomited on, because they deserve nothing less than that. Nothing less. And then Trump's like, I want to, figure out, this vaccine thing. And, I'm going to figure out 9/11 and what Saudi Arabia had to do with it. And I'm going to figure out, and where's all this shit? Where's all this shit? All down the fucking memory hole. All down the memory hole with Trump. And then you got that speech impediment, listen to me, speech impediment Mattis. Mad Dog Mattis, the guy that fucking can't even speak. He's a fucking mental patient. And he's up there saying, terrorism's it's not our main focus anymore. See? He's like Sylvester the cat. Terrorism's not the focus anymore. Okay? It's what was it? Trying to make sure that other countries don't develop. Iran's not allowed to use nuclear energy to lower their bills. I mean, I'm sure there's somebody over there that's trying to fucking steal from their people too. I mean, that's just the way it works. Electric bills through the roof in America. Why? Because they play both sides of the whole nuclear thing. We could have a small nuclear device in each neighborhood, in each county, that would provide enough energy, free, clean energy, so that you could run your air conditioner whenever you wanted to, and not think about, especially poor people of less means, could have heat, could have air conditioning. Pennies. But no. Energy is just another way. Okay? How you live, what you're able to do. Okay, these are the parasites. They're like, how do we charge these? Instead of just saying, we create these devices and then boom. Everybody's got, you pay, every household pays, $25 or $50. That's it, a month. If that. That's too fucking much. But it's all about fleecing, stealing, and being parasitic in nature. And of course, Clint and Patrick did point that out, that 90% of nature is parasitic. So, and of course, they talk about the brain bug and the virus and all the other things that make people do things. And there's examples of it, like in the National Geographic or whatever it was, about these insects that bite other insects, and then that insect that's bitten is like a slave to the biting insect. So it does things outside of its nature. It does things that it's not supposed to do, putting its own self at risk. Why? Because this thing injected it with a zombie fucking virus of some sort. It's not science fiction anymore. It's not science fiction anymore. So, all right. So, Scandal 2 in December 2005, the British Medical Journal published another shocking Doshi report, which created tremors through the halls of the Centers for Disease Control, where the experts used to tell the press that 36,000 people in the U.S. die every year from the flu. Bullshit. Okay, here's a quote from Doshi. Are U.S. flu death figures more PR than science? Yeah, got to get people to take their death shots. According to the CDC statistics, influenza and pneumonia took roughly 60 plus thousand lives in 2001. Okay, so yeah, let's see, 62,000 lives in 2001, 61,777 of which were attributed to pneumonia and 257 to flu. And in only 18 cases was the flu virus positively identified. Boom. You see, the CDC has created, the Centers for Death Control has created one overall category that combines both flu and pneumonia deaths. Why do they do this? Because they disingenuously assume that the pneumonia deaths are complications stemming from the flu. Let's just all push everything together. Let's all collectivize and centralize the control of your mind moving forward. This is an absurd assumption. Pneumonia has a number of causes, but even worse, in all the flu and pneumonia deaths, only 18 revealed the presence of the influenza virus. Therefore, the CDC could not say with assurance that more than 18 people died of influenza in 2001, not 36,000 deaths, 18. Big difference in that number, or those numbers. Doshi continued his assessment of published CDC flu death statistics. Between 1979 and 2001, the CDC data showed an average of 1,348 flu deaths per year, range 257 to 3,006. These figures refer to flu separated out from pneumonia. The death toll is obviously far lower than the old parroted 36,000 people dying every year from the influenza. Okay, so then of course they get Christy Yamaguchi and all these other fucking maggots to get out there and say who is the face of influenza, and it turns out that it's everybody, and twice on fucking Sunday. However, when you add the sensible condition that lab tests have to actually find the flu in patients, the number of flu deaths plummet even further. In other words, it's all promotion and hype. Well, we used to say that 36,000 people die from the flu every year in the U.S., but actually all we can prove is about 20 deaths from the flu. However, we can't admit that, because if we did, we'd be exposing our gigantic psyop. The whole campaign is to scare people into getting a flu shot. That's right. Who have about the same effect as warning people to carry iron umbrellas in case toasters fall from the upper story windows. And by the way, we'd be put in prison for fraud, right? But the real criminals don't go to jail. Scandal 3, the so-called swine flu pandemic of 2009. This one is a real eye-opener. The CDC was caught with its pants down. Swine flu was hyped to the sky by the CDC. The agency was calling for all Americans to take the swine flu vaccine. Remember 2009? The problem was the CDC was concealing a very dirty secret. At the time, star CBS investigative reporter Cheryl Atkinson, right, to be right on with the spelling, was working on the swine flu story. She discovered that the CDC had secretly stopped counting cases of the illness, while, of course, continuing to warn Americans about its unchecked spread. Understand that the CDC's main job is counting cases and reporting the numbers. But let's just stop, because we're in the middle of a pandemic, right, that they declared. What was the agency up to? Here's an excerpt from John's 2014 interview with Cheryl Atkinson. Rappaport says, in 2009, you spearheaded coverage of the so-called swine flu pandemic. You discovered that in the summer of 2009, the Centers for Disease Control, ignoring their federal mandate, secretly stopped counting the swine flu cases in America. Yet they continued to stir up fear about the pandemic without having any real measure of its impact. Wasn't that another investigation of yours that was shut down? Wasn't there more to find out? I believe she might even have been fired from CBS. So she says, the implications of the story were even worse than that. We discovered through our freedom of information efforts that before the CDC mysteriously stopped counting the swine flu cases, they had learned that almost none of the cases that they had counted as swine flu was in fact swine flu or any sort of flu at all. All right? The interest in the story from one CBS executive was very enthusiastic. He said it was the most original story he'd seen on the whole swine flu epidemic. But others pushed to stop it after it was published on the CBS News website. And in the end, no CBS television news broadcast wanted to touch it. We aired numerous stories pumping up the idea of a pandemic, but not the one that would shed original new light on the hype. It was fair, accurate, legally approved, and a heck of a story. With the CDC keeping the true swine flu stats secret, it meant that many in the public took and gave their children an experimental vaccine that may not have been necessary, and I guarantee you has fucking caused damage. That was me, not her. End of the interview excerpt. John adds a few more details. It was rooting for doctors all over America to send blood samples from their patients they diagnosed with swine flu, or most likely swine flu patients, to labs for testing. And overwhelmingly, those samples were coming back with the result, not swine flu, not any kind of flu. That was the big secret. That's what the CDC was hiding. Now, should we be able to even trust these maggots? I say no. Shut it the fuck down. Shut them down. Or at least put people in there that are going to tell the truth. But they want to kill people. That's what they want. This is all part of an agenda. 2009 was just another step. Just another step. That's why they stopped reporting the flu cases. That's what Atkinson had discovered. That's why she was shut down. But it even gets worse, because about 3 weeks after Atkinson's findings were published in the CBS News website, the CDC, obviously in a panic, decided to double down. If one lie is exposed, tell an even bigger one, a much bigger one. Here from November 12th, 2009, WebMD article in the CDC response. Shockingly, 14 million to 34 million U.S. residents, the CDC's best guess is 22 million, came down with H1N1 swine flu by October of 2009. So just keep telling lies. Just keep exaggerating and telling lies. Why? Because all you need is a certain amount of cookie cutter commoners to take it in the ass like they love doing, because everybody else is. So they lie and say 34, 22, I mean, any number in the millions is fucking ridiculous. In the summer of 2009, the CDC secretly stopped counting flu cases in America because overwhelming percentage of lab tests from likely swine flu patients shows no sign of swine flu or any other kind of flu. There is no swine flu epidemic. There was none. Then the CDC estimates there are 22 million cases in the U.S. So now, when health officials began waving red flags and raising alarms about a current viral flu outbreak, it would be more than reasonable to demand they answer questions about their past lies and deceptions, unless you just want to take them at their word. If so, good luck. So, just more fraudulent bullshit lies. And I guess you would have to say, and I don't know if John goes into this, but what the heck was it if it wasn't the flu? They always have to compartmentalize and collectivize things. So if you just call it the flu, people are just going to buy it. They're just going to buy it. Because what happens every year systematically, and what are they saying now? These people are dangerous, man. These people are scumbags, and I call for public executions, man, at some point. Public executions, man. People should have been publicly executed for what the fuck they lied about and where it came from, and start at the top. This isn't funny anymore. It's not cute anymore. It's one lie after the next that causes people to die in large numbers. And not from the flu. Lies about weapons of mass destruction that cause incredible death and suffering. But the system doesn't fucking care about you. They look at you as a fucking useless fucking eater, and they're going to feed you poison food. They're going to shoot you up with toxic vaccines. They're going to fucking send you to war to fight for corporate profit. They don't fucking care about you or your life or your husband or your wife or your kids or your children. They don't fucking care about you. And it's going to become glaringly fucking obvious every day we move down and kick the can down the road before people in government are prosecuted and sent to jail and or killed because of what they've done to other countries, other corporations, or whatever. But no, see, this is the way the system works. They're in control of every major fictionalized creation, whether it be the CDC, whether it be the FDA. They have their minions in every single one of these organizations. They need to be routed out, and they need to be executed publicly. These people are liars and killers. And the way I see it now, from television, reality television show to President of the United States, he's backtracked on almost all the things that he was going to research. It's possible that his own son has autism. And of course, when you talk to any of these people, even people that are running, things, events for autism, they have been trained to say, no, vaccines are not what causes autism. That's just ridiculous. And then everybody just sits back and says, yes, that's just ridiculous. No. Why would somebody hurt somebody? Why would somebody do that to somebody? Why? Because they fucking hate you for no other reason than you just breathe air. that care about themselves and their own maggot families more than yours. Let's see what we got here. Oh. Collective consciousness, the individual is gone. This is also by John Rappaport. In the middle of all the brain research going on from one end of the planet to the other, there is the assumption that the individual doesn't really exist. He is a fiction. And that is, Rappaport's getting closer and closer to the core. He needs to talk with Clint. There is only the motion of particles in the brain. Therefore, nothing is, inviolate. All right, nothing is protected. Make a brain do A, make it do B, it doesn't matter. What matters is harmonizing these tiny particles in order to build a collective consensus, in order to force science of behavior, individual power, your power. It stands as the essence of what the founding documents of the American Republic are all about. Once you scratch below the surface a millimeter or so. Therefore, it stands to reason that colleges and universities would be teaching courses in individual power. So he's already made reference to the American Republic and the founding documents. So the brainwashing is heavy. It's very powerful. Even people like John Rappaport here who digs so much and finds so much information and shares so much information, he hasn't figured out that this is all going back to George Washington is just a absolute psyop by the elite power structure of that time. And moving forward, they just kept it going. They made the documents seem really awesome and really great, and then they started changing them. But again, they were not for you or me, because we are not the people. Right? We're not the people. George Washington, Barack Obama, Hillary Clinton, they are the people. They are the people. Right. As soon as John writes that down, though, we fall down laughing because we understand that the absurdity of such a proposition. Can you imagine Harvard endowing a chair in individual power? Students would tear down the building in which such courses were taught. They've been carefully instructed, and this is what I talk about, the weaponization of these people in these universities that are supposed to get an education when they're being uneducated in what they were supposed to be. They've been carefully instructed that the individual is the greatest living threat to the planet. If you can't see that as mind control, visit your local optometrist and get a prescription for glasses. So we have this astonishing situation. The very basis of freedom has no reflection in the educational system. It's all about being collectivized. It's always been about being collectivized so that we believe the lies that has led us to a man or a woman joining a military and going to fight someone because they were lied to get them to do that. You can say individual within certain limited contexts. You can say power if you're talking about nuclear plants, or if you're accusing someone of a crime, but if you put individual and power together and attribute a positive quality to that combination, you're way outside the consensus, you're crazy, you're committing some kind of treason. And of course, that's what they've done. Just like somebody says, I don't believe in climate change and that it's causing all these things. You are expressing your own individual power, your power of critical thinking, and that is not allowed. It is not permitted. You fucking fool. It's not permitted. Right? In order to spot the deepest versions of educational brainwashing, you have to have some standard against which you can compare what is coming down the pipeline into the minds of the students. And he's written all that in capital. You have to have some standard, or basically some fucking bullshit, against which you can compare what is coming down the pipeline into the minds of the students. If you lack the standard, you miss most of the action. If you lack that standard, you have already been worked over by the system. And in this case, the standard is individual power. Clean it off, hose off the dirt, polish it, look at it, think about it, remember it. Then you'll see some grade A prime mind control everywhere, because schools either don't mention individual power or they discredit it. Back in the days when John was writing on assignments for newspapers and magazines, he pitched a story about individual power to an editor. I wanted to trace its history as an idea over the past 10 years. He looked at me for a few seconds. He looked at me as if I'd dropped some cow flop on his desk. He knew I wasn't kidding, and I had something I could write and turn into him, but that made it worse. He began to squirm in his chair. He laughed nervously. He then stopped laughing. He said, "This isn't what we do." For him, I was suddenly radioactive. I had a similar experience with a high school history teacher in California, which are the worst. Those that think that they know history and that it's been meticulously analyzed to bring it to the textbook that made them who they are in the fiction. I had a similar experience, again, in high school history, a teacher in California. We were having lunch in a cafe in Santa Monica, and John said, "You should teach a course on individual power, the positive aspects. No group stuff, just the individual." He frowned, a deep intellectual frown, as if I'd opened my jacket and exposed a few sticks of dynamite strapped to my chest, as if he was thinking about which agency of the government to report me to. And there's that agency again, that word that Clint has defined or analyzed and brought to us many, many times. Now, for the schizoid part, the movies, the television, the video games, comics, graphic novels, they are all filled to the brim. They're all overflowing with individual heroes who have considerable power. These entertainment business bank billions of dollars because people want to immerse themselves in that universe where the individual is supreme. They want it badly. But when it comes to real life, power stops at the front door and no one answers the bell. Suddenly the hero, the person with power, is anathema. He's left holding the bag, so he adjusts. He waits. He wonders. He settles for less, far less. He stifles his hopes. He shrinks. He forgets. He develops problems and tries to solve them with an impossibly narrow context. He redefines success and victory down to meet limited expectations. He strives for the normal and the average. For his efforts, he receives tidbits like a dog looking up at his master. If that isn't mind control, nothing is. Once we enter a world where the individual no longer has credibility, and what happens when someone speaks out and uses individual power, first thing that they attack in their ad hominem attack is attack the person's credibility. Once we enter the world where an individual no longer has credibility, a world where greatest good for the greatest number is the overriding principle, and where that principle is defined by the elite few, the term mind control or government, or basically government or meant govern, will have a positive connotation. It will be accepted as the obvious strategy for achieving peace in our time. At a job interview, a candidate will say, yes, I received my PhD in mind control at Yale. And then I did 3 years of postdoc work in cooperative learning studies at MIT. My PhD thesis, you ask? It was titled Coordination Strategies in the Classroom for Eliminating the Concept of the Individual. From Wikipedia, cooperative learning, students must work in groups to complete tasks collectively toward academic goals. Unlike individual learning, which can be competitive in nature, we don't want that. Students learning cooperatively can capitalize on one another's resources and skills. Furthermore, the teacher's role changes from giving information to facilitating students' learning. Everyone succeeds when the group succeeds. This is a towering assemblage of bullshit. Everyone succeeds when the group succeeds. This is a quote. You could use that quote on the back cover of Orwell's 84 or Huxley's Brave New World. Everyone does not succeed because individual never finds out what he can do on his own. That avenue is cut off. He only knows what he can achieve in combination with others. He only knows what he can understand when he borrows from others. He may never glimpse what he truly wants to do in life. This is a tragic situation, but the tragedy is concealed because the memory of shifting from individual independence to group dependence is gone. There is no such memory. A child is brought up without independence. Therefore, how can he recall losing it? He only knows the group and the team and the participation and the praise. He only knows the organization of his life within a synthetically produced context. He is taught that this is good and necessary. Maybe if you're a football team, right? So one day, when a bolt comes out of the blue and he recognizes he is himself, what will he use to grasp the revelation and rebuild it and rebuild on it? Yes, there are productive groups and teams, and one is always working with others to some degree. But the core and starting point is one's self. That is where the insight and magic begin. That is where the great decisions and commitments are made. That is where the world is born every day. John or I see no end of writing about this magic, because civilization has been turned upside down by treacherous people, again, who should be executed in public, who have been fabricating a counter tradition that will sink the ship. And that's the goal, is to sink the ship. And then once your ship is sunk, then they, who have been constructing a bigger ship, will have considered the collective conquered, and you're no longer a problem. Your individual thoughts are no longer a problem. Your individual hopes and dreams are no longer a problem, especially if those dreams consist of finding those responsible and having them executed in public. And we see that. And I think that John really, really hits the nail on the head here with this blog update about collectivism. It's all about being collectivized. It's all about being disempowered. It's all about being disempowered by those who wish to collectively destroy all. And that's not obvious by now. I don't know. I don't know what is.
all systems. I will MK Ultra ya, put the MK scope on ya. If the MK hits you, it's guaranteed to open ya. The 57mm Mark 110, 220 rounds a minute, try to stop them. Don't put that on your wish list, that's retarded babble. Protesters make the hit list soon as they start to rabble. They are nothing but fishes in the barrel. It doesn't have to be Christmas for a carol. Some decorate with ornamental decorum. Some perform Shakana on Hanukkah and Purim. That's where my job come in. I am a blessing to the mercenary for the corporation selling weapons to them. Any potential competitor step into them. I'm authorized to knock them out and stick a GPS into them. They want to sell uranium to Iran that's enriched. That's a bitch. Now they got a GPS.